one thing that I did watch, one single solitary thing that I did watch and I actually loved. And I can't believe that this has happened in modern day wrestling, but they've come up with a new gimmick match that actually doesn't spit on wrestling. NXT, the Fight Pit match with Matt Riddle and Timothy Thatcher. Everybody, I had several people, you said something about it. Several people said, oh, you got to see this. You won't hate it. I not only didn't hate it, I loved it. And it proves that still somehow in this day and age, you can come up with a gimmick match that's different, but it's not insulting. If you treat it seriously, they can have that match again because it will be something that people didn't remember as a goddamn goof. I'm sure they can build it in the future. I'd like to see it. You have to have guys in there that have some type of MMA flavor, which is why this worked. But I'd love to see that on a big pay-per-view or something on the main roster in the future, the Fight Pit concept. I haven't been that... I haven't seen it with Matt Riddle in the matches that he's had when we were watching NXT because there was the element of he was still a little silly in the funky movements he makes and etc. But in this case, this was his element. And because he does have an MMA background and he knows how to fucking work a contest. And I've heard a lot of good things about Thatcher. And to me, I think probably I haven't seen a lot of Riddle and haven't seen really anything of Thatcher but this. You may have seen a little more. To me, it seems like Riddle is probably a better athlete and has the MMA background. Thatcher looks like he's a better pro wrestler. Am I on the market there with that?
I guess so. I mean, Riddle's an acquired taste, but he's a pretty good pro wrestler too. But I guess that's Thatcher. I don't know if Thatcher has any sort of MMA background. I'll put it that way.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Thatcher seemed like he was more at home in his movements, and he seems like a very good worker. Whereas Riddle seemed like he's herky jerky and he's not a smooth worker in some. Especially just a regular pro style match, he does a lot of funky shit. But when they were trying to work wrestling and work a contest, he did very well, and it actually helped when they did some pro stuff. He looked a little herky jerky because a contest does look a little herky jerky. So, and they did a knocked out tooth spot, which could have been stupid and goofy like they did with Dr. Britt Baker and whoever was on AEW a while back, where it was obvious the girl had her tooth in her hand trying to show it to the camera, and oh my gosh, it just didn't happen. But in this case, you heard some of these shots these guys were fucking flinging, the fucking kicks off the cage, blah, blah, blah. It was plausible. It wasn't overdone. The blood did not look bad, as sometimes blood usually does if it's not. Now somebody's going to call in and say, guess what? He really got his teeth kicked out, and I'll feel bad. But they did that as a break spot with the doctor checking, but there was no winking. There was no funniness. They were taking it seriously. He can fight. Okay, he can fight. They all the way through this, they were serious and it made sense. And then they built toward going up on the platform. They saved that for last. Thatcher took one bump off the fucking thing. Matt Riddle did one fucking dive off the thing. Holy shit, and it was replayed. Bang, 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 bang. And then right as it looked like that Riddle may have it, Thatcher gets him and gets a fucking tap. It was great. It was serious. It was competitive. It wasn't stupid, silly, or staged. You could get involved in it. It didn't piss on anything. And that's for the soulless people who like pro wrestling. I suggest you check this out because it wasn't really pro wrestling. It was a whole new thing, but it wasn't an insulting, stupid, silly, fake new thing. It was a new thing that would fit with wrestling. I could have seen Jack Briscoe and fucking Dory Funk Jr. having a cage fight type of thing. I don't know about the platform on top. I don't think Dory's going to be taking those bumps, but it's not putting a screen door on a submarine. It's not putting a hat on a hat. It made sense. The gimmick and the setup made sense for the competitors involved, and it was a different take on cages. and it wasn't stupid. Am I just crazy here, or can people not see the fucking difference there?
No, I love this. I'm, one of the soulless wrestling ghouls out there.
Yes.
That don't like all the comedy stuff. I thought this was exceptional. This was the best thing I've seen in a long time. And one of the great things about it is it didn't go too long. Like, it wouldn't work if it was just a half hour nonstop, because an MMA fight never goes that long.
Yeah.
It was rather brief. And the entire time, other than the break to check on the injury, which worked, it just felt like it was nonstop. It felt like these guys are really kicking the crap out of each other.
Well, and when you say rather brief, for people who haven't seen it, it wasn't like 2 minutes, but it wasn't 30 minutes. It was start to finish of the match was maybe 10 or 12?
Yeah, I was going to say 12 minutes or so, yeah.
But it like you said, after the stoppage at the break for the knocked out 2 spot, which was better than them doing a double dive off the top of the thing and just laying there. At least they gave you some pithy thing to fucking go to the break with. Like you said, it was nonstop. They were going after it, and they were they were obviously selling and registering and reacting to what was happening, but there was action, and they were each seriously trying to beat the other one until one did. Imagine that.
I thought it was great. I'm actually excited now to see more Timothy Thatcher. I hadn't watched that much of him before, but I'm intrigued by him now. I kind of want to see more. I do want to ask you, Jim, I guess this is a good opportunity to. One of the things that I thought did help the match was the idea that they now have some people in the crowd on WWE shows.
Well, yes.
And they have like a plexiglass barrier. So I guess, you can't spit at the wrestlers or something, or, breathe on them. But what did you think of that? The idea that there was some noise coming from the crowd, that now WWE on Raw, and they did here on NXT, they have people, whether they're Performance Center wrestlers or whoever, in the crowd.
Well, that's the reason why I'd recorded NXT to begin with. I didn't know they were going to have an actual, revolutionary gimmick match on. I just said I heard that they were going to actually start doing that, which has been the one, consistent benefit or advantage that AEW has had, is that they've had some noise and some feedback. And golly, I can't remember, but it was some perceptive podcaster a number of weeks ago when this whole thing started that said, they got 100 wrestlers under contract nobody's ever seen. If they just put some of them out there, like the UFC Tough Enough, or was it Tough Enough? What the goddamn was the fucking series for UFC that?
Ultimate Fighter.
Ultimate Fighter, thank you. Where they were having gym fights, but the other fighters were around. That's the analogy I drew. That's what they're doing. That's what AEW has been doing. It's not as sterile and antiseptic, and that's not a pun with the virus, but it's just not so quiet and just clean and just empty and silent, and it's soulless. It has some oomph because there you've got some feedback. Even if it's not 10,000 people, it's still people registering and reacting to what's going on. And with something like this also, this lent itself to being like an Ultimate Fighter match with the other fighters in the gym, as the audience. So it definitely adds to it. And if this had been on the other channel, this same match, they would have been up on the platform. They would have instantly been diving off the platform. They would have been out on the floor outside the fucking thing. Then they'd have got back in and done some bullshit that, just went on and on and on, took every bump they could figure out, made everything meaningless, and then, had a bunch of guys run in and dive off the top of the fucking thing. This is when you have some restraint and you're building something. This is what you fucking do. And it worked, and it was great, and it was different. So it can be done. You just have to actually, have, I guess, some type of seriousness about what you're thinking about, and also have the mental level of someone over the age of 13 that thinks that it's funny that guys change clothes when they're thrown in the ice machine. I don't fucking know.